Hand of the Day.
Welcome back to an episode of The Hand of the Day. I just want to start off by saying thank you guys so much for your support as we've transitioned to Conscious Poker and I've started a new training site and producing new videos, new style of content. I really appreciate everyone's support here. It means a lot to me and it keeps me inspired to make these videos. So just want to say thanks in advance. For you guys that want more advanced content and you like this Hand of the Day style of video, I encourage you to check out the link below. We have a ton of free content that I've spent a lot of time creating at Conscious Poker that I really think will help take your game to the next level. We have pre-flop charts, we have push-fold charts, we have my hand reading system, which is the exact blueprint I use to make decisions versus each and every opponent that I face pretty much every time I have a decision at the poker table. This is a step-by-step system that I use to make decisions at the table. And I've made all this content available to you absolutely free. I've done that because it's part of our mission to help turn good players into great ones. And I believe that once you see the value of our free content, you'll like the stuff that we're producing at Conscious Poker and want to stay followed and stay tuned to us and learn poker through us as well. So I encourage you guys to check that out if you like this. And yeah, that's it. Thanks so much. All right, let's jump into this Hand of the Day. This one comes from Axe of Death, one of my readers, and he's in a very interesting spot here. Multi-way pot from the big blind, and I know this is a spot that sometimes gives people a lot of trouble in multi-way pots, so I chose this hand specifically because I think there's some interesting depth that we could get into during the hand. So this hand kicks off with 1-2 blinds. We get an open to $12 here in early position, and as is typical of some live games, we get odd pre-flop fundamentals. In online poker, you're not going to see something with like a 5-way pot, but in live poker, it's very common to have a domino effect, and once someone calls, everybody else sort of jumps in and calls as well. So this spot we have third position opening to $12 with a 6x open, which is probably pretty standard at a 1-2 game. Person to his left calls, person to his left calls, the cutoff calls, the button calls, the small blind calls, and we're in the big blind with 9-7 of diamonds. This is a great hand, a great spot to be in. The pot is $74 and we're calling $10. We're getting 7.5 to 1 here pre-flop. This is a great spot to call. Now there could be a case for 3-betting here, and the reason I wouldn't mind 3-betting is basically if we get through the original raiser, it's very likely that we're just going to win this pot. So if we do decide to 3-bet, we have to go for a very big size and hope the original raiser folds. I would go something like $65. You don't want to be like priced in to call a jam. So that it's kind of awkward to 3-bet here. I think I would like it more if we were like $300 deep, 150 big blinds. I wouldn't mind 3-betting to something like 65, 70, folding to a jam, really putting everyone in a tough spot. So it's a great spot to 3-bet if you're a little bit deeper, because you're risking like 1/5 of your opponent's stack, and you're putting them to a decision where they have to risk their entire stack. 1/4, 1/5 of their stack, where they have to risk their entire stack. In this particular spot, if you 3-bet to something like 70 and get jammed on, you almost are getting priced into call against something like 2 overs. So I don't really love 3-betting here with this particular hand. I think you're a little bit too shallow. But I could see it being tempting just because, you know, if the first player folds, you're going to probably have that domino effect and get everyone else to fold. That said, you just have too much incentive here to call. If you call $10, you're getting 7.5 to 1. You close the action. You guarantee you see the flop. So I would play this hand as a call, which is what our opponent did. He opts to call here, and we go 7 ways to the flop. The flop comes down total gin for us, 9-7-3 rainbow, and big blind checks. It's on us. Now here you could make a case for leading. I could see why you would be tempted to lead here, I guess, but I think it's a little bit awkward of a play. I don't really think we should have a leading range here. I don't really think it's a good spot to construct a leading range. It's hard to be balanced, and it's just so strong. The range of hands that we could profitably lead into 7 people or 6 other people is so narrow that I think it just makes more sense to have a checking range for all of our hands and keep our range wider. So even if there was a flush draw, I would be a little bit more tempted to lead here. You don't really want it to get checked around. Our leading range could technically be wider if there is a flush draw on the flop. But on a dry board like this, I much prefer to play this as a check raise or a check call, depending on who bets, who calls, and what happens. Big blind opts to check here, which I like. I mean, our stack to pot ratio is only 2, so it's pretty easy to get all the money in. You don't really have to lead here. Original raiser now bets. And when he bets here, I pretty much don't put him on air. I understand that people like to c-bet here when they're the original pre-flop raiser, but in this particular spot, and not c-bet here, c-bet in general when they're original pre-flop raiser, but in this spot, it's so risky to c-bet with air because you have 6 other people behind you and this board could have hit someone pretty easily. You're not going to really get any top pair or better hands to fold in a 1-2 cash game. So I think in order for the original raiser to bet here, I think they pretty much have to have an overpair all the time. Otherwise, they have to have something like, 10-8 maybe, or something like that they raised with an early position, 4-5 or 5-6 maybe, a double gutter that they can justify betting the flop with as a bluff. So I think their range here has to be really, really strong, even for a half pot bet like this. I just don't see air making a lot of sense. When the small blind calls, we could just jam here. The pot is already like 140 and we only have 160. So if we jam, an overpair is never going to fold. They're getting too good of a price. We could be jamming here with hands like 5-6, 10-8, 8-6 as bluffs. And so we could jam here with 9-7, hoping to get called with an overpair. The other thing is that it's pretty likely that one player calls. Like maybe the grinder folds an overpair, maybe, but that just seems pretty unlikely to me. And then I think if seat 5 has like a 9, he's probably going to call it off because our range is basically 2 pair or sets or draws. So I think jamming here, I don't mind as a play. I think it's obviously a profitable jam. If we were deeper, I would definitely just call. But because of our stack to pot ratio and our stack size, I don't mind jamming here. That being said, I think calling is probably slightly better. So they have 2 good options here. So it might seem like I'm bouncing back and forth and being hypocritical, but I actually just think you have 2 really good options. And so if what I would decide to do would ultimately be based on the question I would ask myself, which is what would I do with my other hands? So what would I do if I had 10-8? Would I jam with 10-8? If I would jam with 10-8, I'm probably going to jam with 9-7. If I would just call with 10-8, I would probably call with 9-7 to be a little bit more balanced. Because you're getting such a great price on calling with something like 10-8, and because it seems so likely that the original bettor has an overpair and that he won't fold, I think most of the time here, if you have something like a straight draw in the big blind, you're probably just going to call, peel one off, and try and hit your hand on the turn and double up cheaply. I don't think you're going to jam here just because it's so unlikely that everyone else is going to fold, and it looks like someone has a strong hand, either a set, like the small blind called, maybe a 9 at the worst, and someone has an overpair. It doesn't seem like you're going to get this check raise all in through that often. You're not going to get people to fold. So I think you're probably going to just call here with your straight draws. So because of that, I would call here with 9-7, make my range more balanced and make my hand more deceptive. When you overcall here, it kind of looks like you have a draw. And so I think, if it gets checked around, you could bet the river, or it's likely that the grinder is going to go all in on the turn trying to protect his hand anyway. So you're probably going to win all the money anyway. I would probably just overcall in this spot here. I think that's just the better way to play your entire range. So Axe of Death decides to call, which I like. I think he was thinking on the same logic. And the turn is really interesting. It comes an ace. Small blind now checks, which he's probably going to do with all of his hands here. I don't think he has a betting range. We now should check. We shouldn't have a betting range either. We would never jam here with like a straight draw. I just think it's way too loose. Not way too loose, I just think we would never do it. I don't think we have a betting range. So checking makes a lot of sense. And now the original raiser bets 85. The small blind folds, which tells me he either had a straight draw or a 9. And now it's on us. So at this point, I think we have a very clear jam. If we were deeper, if we were like, $400 deep or something, or like 200 big blinds deep on the turn, I would make a case for calling here and making your range look wider. And maybe if your opponent's bluffing, he might try and rep the ace on the river and bluff the river again. He might value bet thinly. He might fold to a check raise jam if he has one pair like ace X. He might fold if we jam the turn, but he might value bet the river if we just call. So I would just call the turn here if we're deeper, make my range wider, make me tougher to play against, especially if this turn were bringing a backdoor flush draw. The reason I think that's important is if the turn brings a backdoor flush draw, there's going to be more hands in our range that we can check call the turn with, namely all the straight draws that now picked up flush draws. But at this stack depth, I think we have a clear jam. Like, it's only $50 more for him to call. If he is bluffing with any equity, he's pretty much going to have to call it off on the turn anyway. We don't want to let him see a river for free and then play perfectly against us, basically check back if he misses his draw, and value bet only if he has a hand he would have called an all-in with anyway. So I would jam here, deny some equity, and I don't think we have another play basically because of our stack depth. As played, Axe of Death just opts to call, and I guess I don't really see the call here. Like, you're going to be getting 10-1 on the river if your opponent bets, so your opponent really can't bluff. It just doesn't really make much sense to me given this stack depth. I would just jam it in here. Anyway, as played, he opts to call. The river comes in offsuit 4, and I guess at this point I would just check. Maybe I would just probably check here and figure that my opponent's going to bet any strong hand and put it in. Or maybe I would just jam, I guess, at this point. I don't know. I would have jammed the turn, so it's kind of a weird spot. I'm thinking on the fly here. It's actually the first time I'm watching this hand. I'm watching it in real time. Yeah, I guess I would just check call it off here. We now check. Our opponent now checks behind with ace-king, which is a ridiculous play to me. I think ace-king here is a very clear bet, and we end up winning the pot. But I think ace-king here is a very clear bet on the river. I think ace-king is a bet even if you're deeper. I would still like to bet here with ace-king. I understand we could have sets here in the big blind or two pair, but ace-king is way too strong of a hand to check here given the stacked up. So I would definitely see ace-king as a bet. I'm very surprised he checked here with this hand. We ended up winning the pot. I think we missed a little bit of value. I think that it's not so important to focus on exactly, just what hand we have and like, oh, we have a really strong hand, the money's going to get all in anyway. I think what's much more important is to think about the long-term equity of why you're making these types of decisions and how you're playing this hand. So I like to focus on the strategic decision-making in these videos because I think that ultimately is what's going to help you and what's going to make you have the biggest win rate, the biggest edge against your opponents. So one more time, I encourage you guys to check out the links below if you guys want more free content from us at Conscious Poker. There's some awesome stuff there. Enter your name and email, send it over. It's all free. I think you guys will really, really like that stuff if you guys want the next step to improving your poker game. Thanks so much for watching. Hit that like button. I'd greatly appreciate it. Leave me a comment below. How would you have played this hand? I'm always curious to hear from you guys. Any feedback you guys have for how we can make these videos better and more valuable for you is always read and greatly appreciated. So thank you guys so much for watching. On behalf of Conscious Poker, take it easy. Alec Torelli signing off, and see you guys next time on Hand of the Day. Cheers.